Hello, welcome back to IT Landy Nugget courses. This is exercise 3 around, containers. We covered in 1 and 2, building, deploying. Now we will deploy the solution. In this exercise, you will connect to Azure Container Cluster, which we created earlier, the AKS, and then deploy the Docker application first. We need to tunnel into the Azure Container Service Cluster. In this task, you will gather information about your AKS and then execute the command to the Kubernetes services via the tools we installed earlier. If you remember, the AZ command and the kubectl command. So how we can do this? First, open your WSL console, and from there you need to run the AZ command version just to see what version is installed, and that will list all the basically utilities on it. B, the output if the output is not correct, then you need to go back to task 11 under the prerequisite to install it, yeah? Assuming you do the same thing for the kubectl, and then you run the kubectl version, we need to make sure like, it has the right version. You expect something like that. If not, again, go back to the step 11 under the uh, prereq and install it. Once you've installed the right tool and they are valid, what you need to do, you need to do AZ login. And if you remember, we said, okay, make sure the AZ login utilizing the right subscription. So what we do, AZ account list, and then you can run AZ account set hyphen hyphen subscription ID. And if you have tenant, you will do hyphen hyphen tenant ID if you have multiple, okay? Then what we need to do next, we need to configure the kubectl to connect to the cluster. Yeah, AZ, AKS, get credential name, which is your cluster resource group. Yeah, then that should basically list, the connect to it, and then you can list all the nodes running. If you remember, we span only 2 nodes. Kubectl get nodes that will display the node, and you can SSH tunneling into the local nodes. Yeah, on port 8001 or 80, and you can execute the following command to do that. Yeah, az aks browse name of the environment and the name of the node itself. Yeah, after you run the command, it may work at first time, and then later on it might drop. Then you can basically reestablish the connection by running the same command. Yeah, aks browse, and that should allow you to browse to it. Open the browser because we run the environment, we tunnel into it, and then just basically reach out to the local host, and that should display it for us. Yeah. Now the GUI, if you tunnel correctly, you will see the kubectl management dashboard. Okay. And you can see that will basically give you the GUI if you want to use, see the namespace, node, and any relevant information about your node and cluster. Again, go back to the previous screen, make sure you connect to it, yeah, by running, the browse to your cluster, and that should, you know, open the proxy, local proxy to you on that port, yeah. See the proxy forwarding to different ports, okay. Next session, what we will do, we will deploy Surface using Kubernetes management dashboard. In this task, you will deploy API application to Azure Kubernetes cluster using dashboard. From Kubernetes dashboard, select create the top right corner. You can see that blue. And then from there, click create an app. Enter the API for the app name. Enter the logon server credentials for the API. replacing the logon server with our ACR, such as, fabmedical.azure.io, and then number of the pod, select the internal port, and then click on advanced and see the allocated resource. And then you should be able to see something like this. Yep. Enter the 128 for memory requirement, select deploy to initiate the deployment based on the image. It can take a few minutes to deploy the, meanwhile, it will get redirected. Post that to the main dashboard progress bar. Hopefully when that finish, you can click on configure the deployment using fixed host, initiating the port forwarding, and then you click on edit. You will see the settings shown in JSON format, copy and paste. That will be, you can edit the deployment. Again, this is the file. You can use the text editor, and then you can update the deployment. You can see the KS8, or for Windows, you can do that one. Scroll down, find the template spec container, and update it according to the below. Yeah, the API, the container, the path, and the image itself. Yeah. You can do it through here if you know, choose not to do it through the GUI. But again, the container spec has a single entry for the API container. At the amount, you will see the name, how you know what you are looking for. Add the following JSON snippet property, which means the port, container port, and the host port. They match each other. Okay. If not, then you do it for the API, same thing, and you set the spec for the API. Okay. And last part, what you do, you specify the replica. At the moment we have 0. You can do like, multiple replica if you need, which means multiple copies. Yeah. If you want to do it, like you can do 3 or 4, depending on environment. But because we are uh, doing very basic, something applicable to the, scale. Again, you can scale the pod from 1 to 3 or 5. Yeah. And then you can upload the workload. And then same thing with the workload, basically. See how many jobs you have, and just play with it just to get familiar with the workload and scale up the clusters. This is crucial when it comes to basically, like deployment in prod. If you look at this screen, we have pod 1 out of 1. Yeah. Reality in production, you don't need 1 out of 1. Like you need like 2, 3. Yeah, 3 at least, 3 out of 3. This is what you expect. So what does that tell us? When you want to update, it will be updating 1, then 2, then 3, which means you got some resiliency and, HA around the pod themselves. That's why you got the, Kubernetes. Otherwise, 1 out of 1, which means you got only 1 pod in a node. When that one is down, then you are doomed. Okay. Right. That was the primary task. What we will do next, we will do the REST API deployment. So how did we do deployment? If I just take you back a little bit, to the earlier session, we did a deployment via the GUI. Yeah. Now the GUI itself, we used the redirection, and then after redirection, if you remember, we came back here. We browsed to it, on the server itself. Let me just quickly show you where did we go to. We click on create, deploying using the dashboard. Yeah. So that dashboard we did the forwarding to that dashboard on that port 8001. Yeah. And then we browse to the dashboard and we click create. And then we went through the configuration of our environment. And then we specified the server port from where to where using the dashboard, the GUI. And then we deployed the environment. and then we edit the settings, which means the configuration mapping, and then we specify the port itself, just cross-check what we did here, and then the environment port as well for the API. Next session, what we will do, we will use different methods. We will use REST API to do all these updates. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.